About matters governance and the rule of law, democracy, and the BBI forums. One of them happened on Friday in Kisii, the consultative forum. We expect one to happen in the Western region. Has caused a lot of political uproar when it comes to the rule of law, matters, BBI, and democracy. And before we took a short commercial break, we were talking to Nelson Harvey, who's an advocate, who's given us, an in-depth explanation about what he thinks is happening in the country when it comes to matters law. But to continue this discussion with us in the studio this morning is none other than Dr. Churchill Saoke, who is a governance expert, also just to try and explain to us in a political way what this means to the country. And Dr. Churchill, you had what the advocate, Nelson Harvey, has said, and I think you tend to agree with some of his sentiments. But if I may robe you into this, same question that I've asked him, what message is the government really sending out to Kenyans when it comes to obeying court orders? Because the president has been very vocal that you need to obey court orders for this country to work as a country that is in governance. But at the same time, we're seeing the same government not obeying court orders.
Thanks, Brenda. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I think let me go a little bit backwards and also to emphasize what Harvey said. You see, the government is put in place through a social contract between the people and those whom they lead. And if that being so, the thing that keeps us common is the law. It then therefore means that any government or any citizen must always is obliged to adhere to the rule of law, court orders being one of them. But then there is the political dynamics of this. And I think this is where now we fail as a country and a society. You know, if we are to bring out the issues about obeying court orders and following the rule of law, this has to be universal in time and in all circumstances. And I think there has been uproar right now, and I mean, in view of the things that are happening, Kenyans have been trying to backtrack on the things that happened previously on their quest for, obeying court orders. There are instances where some of the proponents of now, those who are calling for obeyance of court orders because it serves specific interests, were actually against some of those things. So it means that when we reach points as a society where we push governments or institutions to follow court orders specifically because it serves our interests, we miss it.
But then it begs the question, and if I may take you to what the Deputy President, William Ruto, said over the weekend, he said that officers, government officers, who are not obeying these court orders will be held personally reliable over the decisions that they've made. Let's just listen to what the Deputy President had to say.
Mimi nataka niwaulize wale viongozi wenzangu wote katika taifa letu la Kenya. Sisi tulikubaliana mambo ya BBI, tulikubaliana tutafute copies ya kutosha, wananchi wajisomee na wajitolee uamuzi. Ni lini ilibadilika kwamba ile tulisema wananchi wajisomee na wajiamulie, ilibadilika siku gani? Sasa tunaambiwa kuna viongozi wa vyama ndio wanataka kusomea wananchi, ndio waamulie wananchi. Ilibadilika siku gani? Nyinyi watu wa Vihiga, mnataka kusomewa ama mnataka kujisomea? Mnataka muamuliwe ama mnataka kujiamulia? Sasa hii ngoma mpya imeanzwa, this political mobilization. Swali la pili mimi nataka niulize, nani amepinga BBI? Iko mtu amepinga BBI? Sasa kama kila Mkenya amekubali mambo ya BBI, kampeni hii yote inafanywa ni kampeni ya nini? Ama ni kampeni ya kutafuta vile ya kufuja pesa ya serikali? What is the campaign about? Kama watu walikubali mambo hiyo ya BBI, sasa hii sarakasi yote inatengenezwa ni ya kupeleka wapi? Jambo la tatu, kama kuna watu wanapinga BBI, wawache kujificha nyuma ya hii kampeni. Waseme ile BBI ilitoka hawakubaliani naye, na watuambie ni kipengele gani, ni sehemu gani hawataki na wanataka nini, kuliko kuzungusha Wakenya na porojo mingi na mikutano mingi na siasa mingi ambayo haina maana yoyote. Wajitokeze waseme ni nini hawapendi kwa ile BBI iliandikwa, ikatolewa, wananchi wakaambiwa wasome. What happened? Ni nini lilifanyika? Ama niaje jameni? Tuko pamoja? Hiyo maswali watujibu, watuambie shida yao na BBI hii ni nini? Campaign hii yote inafanywa kushawishi nani? Si watu wote walikubali hii mambo ya BBI. So campaign ni kushawishi nani? What they want to persuade who?
All right, so Dr. Soki, you've heard what the Deputy President William Ruto has said, and he's just blankly spoken out his heart without hiding anything.
Well, the Deputy President appears to be, he's worried about the kind of mobilization that is coming out from the BBI, especially after the launch. And I think it is more of a deeply looking into the political strategy of the opponents, because you see, in as much as the BBI was to bring Kenyans together, from a political perspective and from a politician's perspective, you are keen on who is driving the agenda and who is likely to come out with more political capital out of the process. So you can already see that there is already a perceived inclination of the BBI towards the Raila side, and is, you know, trying to be like the person who is moving out this process and championing it into the next process. And you know, they started it when they talked about, you know, we need to have a referendum by July this year, and you know, everybody was against it. So he's getting into a point where the president supports this process, and he's the principal assistant to the president. But then within this process, there is someone who is a threat to his political ambition.
But then now, you know, when I had the Deputy President William Ruto clearly, he said, kuna wengine hawasupporti BBI, lakini wanajificha uko nyuma kwa campaign. Kama hawataki, watoke nje, waseme hatusupporti BBI. And it begs the question, some time back, he wasn't supporting the BBI. He later turned around, he started supporting the BBI. We even saw him when the report was being launched in State House and also in Kasarani, you know, and that political statement that was being sent out, like the Deputy President is supporting, then he's again come out to say, this BBI looks like there's a hidden agenda.
It's a political strategy, because you see, he's getting into a position where he got to balance his loyalty for the president without necessarily compromising on his political stature as someone who is able to take some of his key opponents, especially Raila, head-on. Because the moment he gets into the bandwagon of the BBI blindly, then he will be perceived to be sort of not an equal of Raila. But then his main aim is to come out towards 2022 as an equal to Raila, someone who can be able to take Raila head-on in a presidential race.
So why is he worried about the BBI report then?
He's worried because in as long as the BBI, you know, he's not, you know, most of these politicians, they're not necessarily worried about the content of the report. They are worried about, where is this taking me in terms of my political ambition, specifically in terms of gaining the political capital in the coming 2 years to the election. You know, the guys in the opposition, the Raila Brigade, might be interested, they might be into the BBI for specific reasons, not necessarily to, you know, to have a referendum. You know, they could be wanting to derail the political strategy of Jubilee. That could be part of their strategy.
So when he goes ahead to say, again in Swahili, in that clip that you've heard, he says, na hii BBI ni kama inataka kutumiwa kuvunja pesa za serikali. You know, and that is something that even other Kenyans have been asking. Why are county governors, you know, using public funds for this BBI agenda, yet a budget was given out to the task force that, you know, and the task force tenure has been extended?
And, you know, that actually begs the question, is this is the BBI a government project? Is it a government agenda? Because when you look at the inclines of those who are the mobilization, it's so much mainstreamed within government. And that actually begs the question, the role of government in this, and the boundary line between it being a government process and the politics. So when of course, when Ruto proclaims in public that public funds are being used, it could be genuine. He could be genuinely saying that, you are embezzling funds, or he could be using it to brand the process as corrupt. And these people are using public funds to achieve personal gains, and then through that you can be able to gain, the loyalty from the people that, we are not going to support this process that is using our funds for, over 10 billion when people are doing what? When people are suffering and things like that. So that could be part of his political strategy of branding the process a corrupt process.
A corrupt process. But still in the same breath, the Western Region BBI meeting set to be held at the Bhukungu on January 18th has received an all-clear signal from all the 5 Western Kenya governors and other leaders who met on a Sunday in Bungoma at Nzoia Guest Lodge. The meeting was aimed at reaching a common ground on BBI ahead of the meeting in Bhukungu Stadium this coming Saturdays. Now, leaders present called on the involvement of other Western leaders. Willie Lusige with more.
As the clock ticks faster, it seems all is set for the first Western Region BBI consultative meeting in Kakamega, scheduled for January 18th. Led by 5 Western governors, members of the public and politicians met to examine the BBI document in detail and endorsing the Bhukungu meeting, calling for leaders to put aside their personal interests and focus on the benefits of BBI.
What we have to consider is not the interest of Raila or the interest of Uhuru. What we have to consider is the best interest of Kenya.
Members of the parliament demanding that they should also be included in the Bhukungu meeting planning committee. Leaders demanded that all Western leaders to be on board, including Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula, who have come out clearly that they will boycott Bhukungu meeting even though they don't oppose the BBI report.
Tumechakuana wabunge sisi pia 5. Kila mmoja anawakilisha kaunti yake, tunakuja pamoja. So that is not just governors wanatembea peke yao wanapanga na sisi tunapangwa tu.
We will reach out to all leaders, including Mheshimiwa Musalia na Wetangula. We have no agenda to exclude anyone, to isolate anyone, or to compete politically. BBI is about all of us. It's about our joint future.
Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya proposing that a referendum should be held as quick as possible to effect the changes proposed in the Building Bridges Initiative report.
Na sisi tunataka referendum ije kesho. Kule Kakamega mtaona vile watu wa Kakamega watapiga kura BBI.
Leaders present also dismissing possibility of Oparanya being crowned as the region's kingpin during the upcoming event.
We are not here to endorse any single person to be the regional spokesman of Western Kenya.
Kakamega Senator Cleophas Malala warned those planning to attend a parallel rally in Mumias town to counter the Bhukungu meeting.
As the senator, I want to categorically state that I've put every machinery in place to ensure that we only have one meeting, which will be the Bhukungu Stadium meeting. Nobody will be allowed to carry out any sort of meeting on 18th. We are going to mobilize our boys, we are going to mobilize our community to desist from attending a meeting convened by brokers.
And although all is set for next Saturday, it is apparent that a lot of fence mending is needed between the two camps in Western in the next few days. But what is more important is to wait and see if on 18th they will attend the BBI meeting at Bhukungu Stadium. Willie Lusige, Zoya, Bungo.
All right, so BBI report has caused a lot of political uproar also in the Western region. And Dr. Churchill, we have seen Moses Wetangula and also Musalia Mudavadi coming out strongly to give out their sentiments about the BBI report. And somehow, if I may say, sort of like changing tunes a little bit.
Yes, the two are, it's a question of political survival. And, you know, there has been perceived, especially after the handshake, the position of Mudavadi and Wetangula has not been very clear. And I think that many of the coalition partners of NASA have been re-strategizing their political path. Mm-hmm. And when they look at their strategy or where they are in the current realignment, they then have to step backwards. And so what we are seeing, you know, the Raila side has been strategizing because, you know, many of the things that happen in politics, you realize that you might not have a political friend mm-hmm. that you trust for a long time. You then, if you create a king in a given region, mm-hmm. and then when it reaches a point where the king can be able to trust you, can be able to be dishonest and distrust you, create another one. Mm-hmm. So that could be the strategy that Raila is using. And, you know, he was trying to create new people, realizing that the two former principals of NASA are becoming not too committed mm-hmm. to his ambitions. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they were not very keen on supporting him. So right. That is actually what you see right now. Wetangula and Mudavadi are also trying to recreate their path, knowing that within Raila's mind, in his card, they are perceived more as inclined to...
So what is Honorable Raila Odinga going to do to ensure that all the leaders from the Western region, remember also Western region has allies of the Deputy President. Mm-hmm. So what is Honorable Raila Odinga of ODM and President Uhuru Kenyatta going to do to ensure that the entire Western region, political leaders who have a strong support, you know, support this process at the end of the day?
You know, when you look at their strategy, and I'm not speaking for them, when you look at their strategy, they have been keen on trying to create this process like, you know, when you support the BBI, you are supporting the government. When you are opposing it, you are against the government. Mm-hmm. And so naturally, any person will always want to be aligned to the government. If you support it, there are certain incentives that you get, and therefore, through that, they can be able to mobilize the community and many people around him. Mm-hmm. And you see, also the perception that has been created that, you know, the Deputy President no longer has powers, and, you know, he's been isolated by government. Then how do the people perceive this? The people can either perceive this either by seeing him as a victim, mm-hmm. or the people can also perceive this by seeing him as someone who does not, you know, when I follow you, there is no incentives. Mm-hmm. So I got to get to the place where I can be able to get incentives. I can get jobs, I can get contracts, mm-hmm. I can be able to get, you know, I have to be aligned to government. Right. So that is a strategy that they could be able to use in Western Kenya. And you know, when you look at some of the key leaders who have been in government, you know, like the Noah Wekesas, they come out and say that, you know what, you know, the Uhuru Kenyatta is going nowhere. So it means we are telling you people that, you know what, politically, if you go against the BBI, you are going to be out of government in the next.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Churchill Sauke. We bring it to an end with your last sentiments. Dr. Churchill Sauke talking to us about matters governance in the country.